So let's add some styling, and for that I'll simply add a static folder in my app folder, and then there add the reviews subfolder as you learned it, and here I'll add a styles CSS file. And I want to keep this relatively simple. I just want to give this form some basic styling. For this, I'll select the body and give this generally a font family of sans serif, since I prefer that look. And I'll remove the margin on the body, which we have by default. And I'll select the form element and give that a margin of free rem auto and a width of 90%, but a max width of 40 rem, which will be centered because of margin auto here to the left and right. Give it a padding of 1 rem, a border radius of 12 pixels, and a background color of white. And then a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 8 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.26. And that's just some styling I'm coming up with here. Now I want to give the button some styling as well. Set the cursor to pointer. Give it a padding of 0.5 rem and 1.5 rem. Give it a border radius of 12 pixels. And give it a background color of purple, which I'll use as a basis to pick a different color. Let's say this blue purplish, this dark blue purple. Give it a text color of white and a border of 1 pixel solid and that same color as I use for the background. And then maybe also define a hover and an active style for the button where I set the background color to that purple color, but then pick a little bit of a lighter shade of that. And the same for the border color, set that to that same lighter shade. Now let's just make sure we also import the styles CSS file. And therefore let's go to review HTML, and here below the title, I'll add a link where I set rel to style sheet, and then set ref at this dynamically generated import. So here we use static and then point at reviews/styles CSS to use this styles CSS file in the reviews folder in the static folder. For that, we need to unlock this static feature, which we do with load static at the top. With that, let's quit and restart our server so that the static files are picked up now that we added them for the first time. And now I got this look here. Actually, let me tweak this a little bit and change the border radius of the button to 6 pixels. And for the form, I'll set the max width to 30 rem. And this now looks better. And now let's work on the input. And for this, we can utilize this form control div, which we wrapped around our form elements, our input elements. And therefore here, I'll now access form-control, this class, which we added to that div, and give that a margin to the bottom of, let's say, 1 rem. And then also use form control and select any inputs in there to give them a font where I inherit the base font so that they use the same font family as on the rest of the page. Give them a padding of 0.25 rem in all directions. Maybe a border radius, border radius of 4 pixels for slightly rounded corners. And set a border of 1 pixel solid and a slight gray color. And then also work on the focus style of those inputs. So when they are focused, to change the border color then to, let's say, our dark purple color. Set outline to none. And set the background color to a very light version of our purple color. So a very, very light version like this. Also on input, I want to set display to block so that they take up the entire line, and set width to let's say 10 rem here. Let's see if that works. And then also target form control label and maybe give them a font weight of bold to make them bold, and also set display to block here. And you find these finished styles also attached to this lecture. With that, if we reload, that's how our form looks like now. Now, of course, you can tweak this in whatever way you want, but I'd say it doesn't look too bad. And what we can do now is we can now also style our errors. So that if I remove that required attribute here, so that we disable the built-in browser validation, and I submit this empty form, we now also change the styling of the input and the label if we have an error here, and we also change how our errors are being shown. For this, let's go back to CSS, and on the label, first of all, I'll add a margin bottom of 0.5 rem, and then I want to target my error-specific classes. For this, again, let's note that here in the rendered HTML content, we have an error list class on the rendered list of errors. That's a default class Django adds there, and you could customize this as well with some settings in the forms py file. Here, besides setting those error messages, you can also set the error class, which is added on this list of errors, but I'm happy with the default. So we have this error list class on that rendered list, and don't forget, we also manually add errors to our class on that wrapping div. So these are two classes which we can now use for styling. And let's start with the error list on that unordered list. There, I'll set the list style to none to disable the bullets, set margin and padding to 0, and important, give that a color of red. To be precise, let's pick a little bit of a nicer red, maybe some dark red color like this. And I'll also select errors, which is that extra class we add on the form control div if there is an error in that affected input. And I then want to target any input in a div that has the errors class and give that a border color of that red color we used here, like this, and give it a background color of a very light red version, something like this. And I'll also target the label and change the label color also to this red color if we have an error on that input. And with those classes added, if I now reload, you see this is red, this has this red background and a slight red border, and this text is also red. And maybe some spacing would be nice between input and this error list, and therefore on the error list, I'll set margin not to 0, but to 0.5 rem, to top and bottom. And with that, this looks nicer. So now we have this output here. Now we do have some styling added. And of course, you can tweak this to your requirements. But now we know how we can utilize the form class and still customize it a lot. But of course, at the moment, we still only have one form field. And it's definitely time to change this now and to dive into other fields and learn how we can render those as well.